You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some big news in the Trump New York trial. Judge Engoron has refused to allow him to speak in front of the court for a closing statement. Now, at the risk of Trump's inevitable censorship complaints, what happened here?
So, first of all, it's not that unusual for a judge to tell a litigant, a defendant, or in a civil suit, what we call a respondent, that no, you don't get to give the closing argument. You're represented by counsel. There's a whole body of case law that says if you choose to be represented by counsel, the only time you can say anything in court is if you take the stand and testify and can be cross-examined by opposing counsel. So this is not a surprising decision by Judge Engoron. However, under the rules and procedures of New York, it is up to the judge as to whether he wants to kind of waive the normal procedure and allow the defendant to make part or all of a closing statement at trial. Judge Engoron, after some really interesting and frankly humorous email exchanges between the judge and one of Donald Trump's lawyers, said, yeah, you know what? You have kind of proved my point. Donald Trump will not be allowed to give any of his own closing argument in this case.
Well, what is he sacrificing here? I mean, they'll paint this as yet more evidence of the communist Marxist Democrats and Democrat puppets silencing Donald Trump. But in actuality, what is he being robbed of by virtue of not being allowed to do this closing statement?
He is being robbed of yet another opportunity to spout out nonsense, lies, attacks, make campaign statements, and then turn around and use all of that to, further grift from his supporters. So this is something where, Judge Engoron was kind of damned if he didn't and damned if he did. If he let him do all of those things that I just mentioned, Donald Trump would exploit it to his advantage. Of course, by refusing to let Donald Trump speak, of course, Donald Trump is still the victim. He's still aggrieved. The unjust
Shocker how it always works out that way.
yeah, the unjust system is still holding him down. So you got to send him money. You got to send him money. So listen, whichever way Judge Engoron went here, Donald Trump was going to exploit it and use it to further grift, steal money from those people who remain gullible enough, foolish enough to send Donald Trump their hard-earned dollars. But if you give me 1 minute, Brian, I think it's really worth it if the viewers get to hear for themselves what Donald Trump's lawyer said in this email exchange, what the judge said, and then how this thing wrapped up. Here is what the judge said after Donald Trump, through his lawyer, Chris Kise, requested to be permitted to give some of the closing argument. The judge said, in my sole discretion, I will consent to let Mr. Trump make a closing argument if, and only if, through counsel and by himself, personally on the record just before he speaks, he, Trump, agrees to limit his subjects to what is permissible in a counsel's closing argument. That is, commentary on the relevant material facts that are in evidence and application of the relevant law to those facts. He, Trump, may not seek to introduce new evidence. He may not testify. He may not comment on irrelevant matters. In particular, and without limitation, he may not deliver a campaign speech, and he may not impugn myself, my staff, plaintiff staff, or the New York State court system, none of which is relevant to this case, and all of which, except for commenting on my staff, can be done and is being done in other forums. If Mr. Trump violates any of these rules, I will not hesitate to cut him off in mid-sentence and admonish him. If he continues to violate the rules, I will end his closing argument, prevent him from making any further statements in the courtroom. If he violates the current gag order against him, I will immediately direct court officers to remove him from the courtroom forthwith and will fine him not less than $50,000. Brian, does it sound like Judge Engoron has had about enough of Donald Trump?
Not only that, but the notion, I know everybody watching this right now is thinking the exact same thing. The notion that Donald Trump would be able to successfully accomplish any of that like not talking in a campaign style speech, not talking about irrelevant matters, not impugning the character of all of these people is so laughable. He would have better luck stopping the sun from rising in the morning than stopping Donald Trump from doing any of those things. So of course, Donald Trump isn't testifying in a closing statement here.
He isn't. And do you want to hear what an actual lawyer, Christopher Kise, wrote to Judge Engoron in reply to what I just read? I hope you're
Yeah.
sitting down. Justice Engoron. This is very unfair, Your Honor. You're not allowing President Trump, who has been wrongfully demeaned and belittled by an out of control, politically motivated attorney general, to speak about the things that must be spoken about. Okay, I'm guessing Christopher Kise didn't really write that. I think he cut and pasted it from something Donald Trump wrote and told him to say to Judge Engoron, which, Brian, no self-respecting lawyer would do. And here is the very short reply from Judge Engoron. I won't debate this yet again. Take it or leave it, now or never. You have until noon, 7 minutes from now. I will not grant any further extensions. And shortly after noon, when he didn't hear back from Christopher Kise, he said, okay, you're done. Trump will not be speaking during closing arguments. Like I say, Judge Engoron, like the rest of America, has had enough of Donald Trump.
Yeah, it really is amazing how no matter who Donald Trump works with, they all inevitably start sounding like him. They all just like he just rubs off on everybody so that they just become like some miniaturized version of Donald Trump himself. Glenn, even if Trump was allowed to make his closing statement, isn't it just Judge Engoron himself who's going to make the decision in this case regarding how much Donald Trump owes in damages?
Yeah, it is. There's no jury there, but listen, Judge Engoron was trying to play by the rules, and the rules say ordinarily a defendant or respondent does not get to give a closing argument if he's represented by counsel. But because the rules in New York say the judge has discretion, he can waive the ordinary practice and give the defendant an opportunity to say something in closing arguments. He was following the rules, the procedures, and the law. But at the end of the day, I think he made the right decision. He probably already knows what he's
Right.
going to do in his ruling, and anything Donald Trump said or did probably wouldn't impact it one way or the other.
All right. Now, with that said, what is the timeline for resolution in this case? Because I think the last that we heard, this had initially been a case to seek $250 million in damages. That number was increased to now seeking $370 million, as well as barring Donald Trump and his family members from working in businesses in New York. So what is the resolution for the timeline here?
Yeah, so the timeline is on the 11th of January. That's when the closing arguments will be given by the parties. Now, remember, they were already sort of submitted in writing in advance. The judge wanted kind of an advance preview of what the parties would be arguing in closing. And so once the closing arguments are held and they've concluded, Judge Engoron, I believe, said he may take a week or two to kind of pour through everything and reach a conclusion, and then he'll probably come out, a week or two after the closing arguments and announce his ruling and his findings from the bench, including any monetary damages, any so-called disgorgement, money that Trump and his sons will have to pay back, and any bars from doing business in New York moving forward.
All right, and just a quick question on the prospect of an appeal. I know that this will inevitably be appealed, but if Donald Trump is ordered to pay $370 million in disgorgements, then could that be stayed pending the appeal, or could Judge Engoron rule that he has to pay it and that he does have the right to appeal, but that's not going to impact his ability or impact the ruling that he should be paying this money right now?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not an expert on New York civil procedure or, frankly, civil procedure in any of the 50 states, but let me give you an idea of generally how it works. Ordinarily, judges will put a stay in place pending appeal, such that money damages that have been awarded either by a jury or, like in this case, by the judge, would basically be put on hold while the case works its way through the appellate process. However, there are a couple of other ways to deal with it. A judge could deny to put a stay in place and could say, listen, you can appeal to the appellate court for a stay, but I am ordering this money judgment executed. Or what I think is a middle ground, and I think what we're likely to see happen here, Donald Trump will have to put up a money bond, sort of a surety to guarantee that he will have the money to satisfy the judgment that's been awarded against him at the end of the appellate process, assuming he loses the appeal. So I have a feeling that's probably the middle ground that Judge Engoron might choose in a case like this.
All right, well then Donald Trump supporters can expect to see some grifter text messages and emails coming up in the next few days or weeks, depending on when we get this decision. So with that said, when we do get this decision, we'll bring it to you. So if you're not yet subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.